Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap-up part 1. I've read about 4 or 5 books this month so far, so not a ton, but enough that I really enjoyed that I wanted to talk about them before some of the details started becoming fuzzy, if you know what I mean. So let's just get started on the books. So the first book I read this month was Royally Yours by Emma Chase, and I read this one like on November 1st. This is the cover. It's very man-heavy cover, but I really love this book. So Royally Yours is book 4 in her Royal series. I've loved the whole series. It's so good. So this one is actually kind of a prequel to the series, and I wasn't sure if I'd like it, to be honest, because it follows Queen Lenora, and she in the series is the grandmother. So this one's a bit of a historical because it takes place in like the 40s, 50s, I think. And Lenora is a very like stoic, very kind of harsh character in the series, but you hear a bit about her past throughout the series. So I was really intrigued, and I have to say that this one is now my favorite in the series. I absolutely loved it. This book had me crying from like literally 50 pages in, I think it was. I was crying before we even met the love interest, and I'm gonna be a little bit vague with it because I felt like the twist of like how the love interest was introduced, which is Edward, was really different, and I really enjoyed it. The friendship in this book is beautiful, wonderful storyline on its own, and then the love story between Lenora and Edward, who will be her future husband, was just so good. I loved it. It was so swoon worthy. She, even as a teenager, which is when the story starts, when she's 18, she's kind of thrust into this position of power very early in her life, and she's been basically trained since she was a child to kind of take this on, and that made her a very kind of regimented person. But then you have Edward, who is of noble kind of blood, I guess you'd say, but he kind of relinquished all his titles, gave up everything. I think it was supposed to be like 5 years before, and has been like traveling the world, doing just all this different stuff. He's been to like all these continents, and he basically wants nothing to do with like the royal family or royal life at all. So the two of them could not be more polar opposites, which is like, I love when that happens in a book. But he was just so patient with her, and she was just a little firecracker, and I loved it so much, guys. If you love royal romances or just romances in general, definitely pick up this one, Royally Yours. I think you could read it without the rest of the series, because it's a bit of a prequel, but I just don't think you get all the nuances. So in my opinion, pick up the whole series. It's so good. I definitely give it 5 out of 5, and it's one of my favorite books I've read of the year. So after that, I did pick up Royally Matched, which is book 2 in the series, and was my favorite before this one, which I didn't pull out, but I did reread that just because I was on such a like high, and I gave it 5 out of 5 again. I do really want to start from the beginning and reread the series eventually. I just didn't have time at the moment, but still an absolute favorite. So the next book I read this month was The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is her new release, and this is a spinoff of the Luck series, which, if you don't know, is one of my absolute favorite YA series of all time. I love that series so much, and this one's a very like highly anticipated spinoff of it. And this one follows Luke, who in the first series was a child. He was pretty young, so I think this one takes place, I want to say like 6 or 7 years after the end of the Luck series, and you kind of get to see what's happened since then in the world. There was a big thing that happened at the end of the series that obviously had really big ramifications on like the world they're living in. So it follows Luke, and then it follows Evie, and Evie is basically going to this kind of nightclub thing. She's trying to like kind of sneak in with her friend with like a fake ID, which is typically not something she would do, but where she goes, she meets Luke, and I feel like this book is best going into a little bit blind, especially if you already love the series, because there was a lot of twists in this book. Evie and Luke, the way that they kind of formed their relationship was really different, and I honestly didn't see some of the twists coming at all, and I'm usually pretty good at figuring out twists, so I loved it. I'll say, as of yet, Evie and Luke haven't quite replaced like Katie and Damon for me as like the favorite couple. I still really loved them, but in this first book, just like in the first Lux book, they're not really together yet. That might be a spoiler, but you know, they meet and they have that banter back and forth, and there's definitely like, you can see where it's going, and I loved reading about both characters, and the ending had a bit of a conclusion, but you can definitely see where it's going. And there's definitely things left open and kind of open-ended kind of streams that you want to know more about. So if you've read the Lex series, definitely pick this up. I gave it 5 stars as well. I was a little nervous picking this up just because I love that series so much, but it definitely lived up, and I think it went in a direction that let it have enough uniqueness and made it different from the original series. The next book I read was Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I've had this one for a while, and I finally picked it up in November for some reason. Not October, but whatever. It's still fine. I actually really enjoyed this one, more so even than I thought I would. Obviously, I thought I'd like it, but so this is kind of historical. It takes place in the 1800s, I think like late 1800s, like 1890s, if I remember right, in London. And obviously it has to do with stalking Jack the Ripper, but in a kind of different way than I thought it was going. So our main character, who is Audrey Rose, is basically working for her uncle, kind of as like an apprentice, and he is a, I guess you'd say like kind of a coroner, but he's like a scientist. And so her family does not want her doing this, but she kind of does it like without them knowing, and very interested in all things like sciencey and like surgery and things like that. There she meets Thomas, who is also kind of an apprentice of her uncle, who everyone kind of has respect, but also thinks he's kind of crazy. So the two of them basically go about kind of trying to find Jack the Ripper. There's kind of ties to Audrey Rose's family, and it hits very close to home for her, a lot of the kind of murders that are happening. I will say this one too had a twist that I didn't see coming. I could see if you read a lot of mysteries, maybe you'd see it, but I don't. So for me, it was really good. I will say this book was kind of gory. I mean, I kind of thought that might be happen going in just because of the premise, but if you get squeamish easily, don't read this. But I did enjoy it. I have to say I loved Audrey Rose and Thomas, and I just loved every interaction they had. You know, he was kind of very accepting of her, which obviously most people in that day and age were not. And I think they really just grew together in a kind of natural way throughout the book. At first they could not stand each other, and then by the end they had a really good bond, and I'm so excited to read the next one because they're going to medical school in like Romania, or it's about Prince Dracula, so somewhere in that area of the world, and I just cannot wait to read that one. I think I gave it 4 stars. It might have been 5. I probably should have checked, but regardless, I really enjoyed this one and I highly recommend. And the last one I read so far this month was All We Want by J. Daniels. This is book, I think it's 5 or 6 in the Alabama Summer series by J. Daniels. It's a novella. I'm a huge fan of the Alabama Summer series. I've read, I'm pretty sure, all of them in that series. And this book follows Luke and Tessa. So it's kind of a pickup from where their books stopped, and then we kind of got brief snippets of them in some of the other characters' books. I loved it. If you've read the series and you like Luke and Tessa, I do think you really do need to read the rest of the series, or at least read Tessa and Luke's book, which is book 2, in order to kind of get anything out of it. But I give it 5 out of 5 stars. It kind of follows them on their journey to have children, and I think that's a really hard subject to kind of write and sometimes read. You know, I don't have children myself, but you can really empathize with the character that's going through that. There was a bit of talk about like infertility, and it just, the strain it kind of was putting on the relationship of the characters, which was both heart-wrenching because you know them so well and you just want them to be happy, but also really heartwarming, you know, when you kind of see them kind of pull together to get through like hard times. So I really enjoyed it. I love J. Daniels' writing, and she just does the characters so well. It's like they're real people in this whole series. So if you like contemporary romance, definitely check out J. Daniels' whole Alabama Summer series. It's great. Okay guys, so those are all the books I read so far in November. I really enjoyed all of these, and I'm actually really excited because I've started some Christmas reading already this month, which will be in my part 2 wrap up, and they're going real well. I'm really, really enjoying them. So let me know what you guys are reading. Are you reading your Christmas books already, or are you kind of waiting till December for that? Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.